You know, it's never a bad thing when you can look at the scoreboard at the end of the night and smile, and that's exactly what us Oilers fans were able to do last night. It was one of those games that looked in the first and second period that that might not be the case, but for the Edmonton Oilers, they sent us to bed pretty happy with the result last night, all told, and that's what I mean by you can literally just look at the box score and smile as an Oilers fan after last night. But there's a ton of good things that came out of last night that we need to dive into here. Not necessarily a post game, but more so a look ahead as things here on Dolynny TV as of the end of tomorrow will transition into World Juniors coverage for the next couple of weeks. We have to kind of look what the Oilers are going to do over the holidays and then hopefully replicate that success we had in Dallas going into the new year. And all of a sudden, you get through the dark, depressing month of December and the Oilers go on a run to the playoffs the rest of the way home. Every single year it seems to be the same old story, and we look forward to seeing that be the story this year. All right, friends, if you're new to the channel, this is Dolynny TV. For those of you returning, well, you knew I had to get the finger snap in there at some point, but as we get set to discuss this video, if you're new to the channel, I want to appeal to you because, my friends, we are 350 odd some subscribers away from 10,000. If you'd be so kind to consider hitting that subscribe button here on the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. As I tell you, we're hitting it this month no matter what happens, but of course, the sooner we hit it, the better off we are, right? The better off. Then all of a sudden, we can start talking about really building up this Dolynny TV community. Anyway, my friends, as we get into it, right? That aside, last night, much needed win. Much needed win from the Edmonton Oilers. That one was very, very, very needed for our Edmonton Oilers. And of course, a big time relief for Oilers fans who, right, you think about that horror of a game against Dallas to start the season earlier on when I think I was up in Red Deer at that point, so the season was only 3 weeks old, I want to say, and yeah, that was a crappy weekend all told. The weather was terrible. Oh my goodness, don't get me started, and of course the roads and everything involved. But the hockey games weren't at all worth a dang either. Anyway, a 6-3 final for the Oilers last night over top of the Dallas Stars, kind of a flip the script of what happened against them last time out. But for the Oilers here, Stuart Skinner gets his 10th win of the season. But the big notable for the Edmonton Oilers in that game last night against the Dallas Stars is they were facing a number one goalie. And this is kind of to the Oilers' credit, is they play number one goalies, generally speaking, very well. 9 times out of 10, it always feels like if the other team has a starter in net, starter caliber goalie, the Oilers are going to play well. If the Oilers have a backup third string goalie in net, you almost same thing as that Anaheim Ducks game. You know it's not going to be a good night for the Oilers. And of course, the Anaheim Ducks game was not a good night for the Oilers. But you get where I'm going with that. Simply put, is the Oilers against the best always tend to bring their best, just generally speaking, in terms of goaltending matchups for the Oilers. So that's that covered off. Of course, the big effort is Jay Woodcroft holds away the lines until 10 minutes before puck drop. The best gamesmanship we've seen from Jay Woodcroft all season took part last night until just before things got rolling in Dallas, where Jay Woodcroft suddenly unites Klim Kostin, Matthias Janmark, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins into a third line unit that was an absolute beauty house for the Oilers last night. They went out there, right? Nuge had a goal and 2 assists. Janmark 2 goals and an assist. Klim Kostin had a huge a huge assist for the Oilers. And I mean, just one of those things too. He gets the assist on the empty netter. He doubles his assists in one game, and that's the kind of things that happen when Jay Woodcroft, with the tools he has, obviously getting Warren Foegele back and healthy is an important piece to this Oilers team simply because it balances out the lineup, right? Without Kane and Foegele in the lineup and without Ryan McLeod there, the Oilers were in this situation where, yeah, Yamamoto came back, but the problem was, despite Yamamoto coming back, he's not a piece that succeeds in the lineup all by himself. And what I mean by that is if he's in the top 6, he needs those 2 other forwards to complement what he does. And obviously on that second line, right, Warren Foegele, a guy who can take a good shot, not afraid to take a good shot like he did last night, and that results in a big time goal for that line. But when it comes to uniting that third line, right now all of a sudden you have Yamamoto producing with players he's capable of producing with. You have two amazing puck retrievers, puck kind of mix-ups on the top line with Hyman and Puljujarvi, and then you got McDavid up there. That demotes Nugent-Hopkins to the third line, but the Edmonton Oilers are a much better, much more dangerous team, especially this year with the emergence of Nuge as he has, with Nuge on the third line. You look at the differences in the Oilers' wave after wave attack last night with Nuge on the third line versus having Nuge at second and of course Draisaitl and McDavid together. And yes, you can complain about Draisaitl and McDavid together, but the problem is when the lineup thins out, the Oilers need to kind of figure out who's going to do what. And without Yamamoto, Kane, Foegele, McLeod in the lineup, you can't throw Draisaitl on the second line and give them guys that aren't going to score anything, right? And I think that was a comment that came in the other day, was simply put, the Oilers don't have guys that can finish from far out, but once you get Foegele back, once you can get Kane back, guys that don't need to be right on top of the crease to score the ugly goal because they are capable, they have a NHL level shot that scores consistently, you're going to win more times than not, right? And that's the thing. You can talk about Puljujarvi and not having a great shot most of the time, but you know what, end of the day too, is when you've got guys on your top lines, they have to be capable of shooting to score, and that's kind of what we see with Foegele coming back, that's what we see with Yamamoto coming back, and getting the combinations together is once you do that, you enable the players that play best off each other to get going. And I think when going back to that, what gamesmanship by Jay Woodcroft point I was making is simply put, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins does not stay with Yamamoto, he stays with Matthias Janmark. And you separate Yamamoto out from Nugent-Hopkins and Janmark, and suddenly Janmark, who's been very much so questioned as to why he was staying on the second line. Why? How? Like, I mean, Puljujarvi's doing literally the same and a little bit more, and Janmark's getting out here and doing nothing. Well, Janmark shows up in a role that's suited for him with line mates that are suited for him, right? You give him the big bad Klim Kostin who creates space. You give him an opportunity to be just a shadow on the ice, right? And that's the problem. That's what Yamamoto is on that second line. You load it up with Foegele and you load it up with Draisaitl. Those are your two shooters. Yamamoto's not looking to be a shooter on that line. But unfortunately on that line with Nugent-Hopkins and Janmark, that defaults makes Ryan Nugent-Hopkins the shooter, where, right, Yamamoto, then the pressure's on him because Janmark's a bottom six forward anyway you slice it. So, right, he should be down there, and Yamamoto and Nugent-Hopkins are left to be shooters at 5-on-5. Nuge, to his credit, has been phenomenal at 5-on-5 in the recent stretch, but unfortunately for Yamamoto, that's way too much pressure for a guy who's a ghost, and by being a ghost, he actually is useful in your lineup. That's the problem for Yamamoto, right? So now all of a sudden you take Janmark, who's more of a guy that, right, just kind of blends into the background and makes plays because others are creating space and time for him to make his play. Well, Janmark finishes with 2 goals and an assist out there because Klim Kostin, right, opens up space. He's a bigger guy and takes up a lot of room and is a powerful guy on the ice. And Nugent-Hopkins, to his credit, an excellent player. And when you kind of get those lineup matchups, right, Nuge is out there as the third line, that creates so much elevation for the play that Nugent-Hopkins in that line is available to make that it just results in a night like that. Now you can say they got lucky and stuff, but again, if they get lucky, that's great. But to drive that much play when you bring down 2 players that have been in your top 6 for the past weeks on end, and you separate them from a guy that you keep in the top 6, and they're the ones that drive the play for the Oilers within the game, it's kind of funny to see that, you know what, right? You kind of balance out the lineup by having the guys back and returning, right? Foegele and, of course, Yamamoto back in the lineup, and they slot back in where they should be, and suddenly that demotes Nugent-Hopkins, who, to his credit, I'm sorry, Nugent-Hopkins has 41 points this season, and he's demoted to the third line. Again, in what world do the Oilers have a 41-point third line center ever in my lifetime as an Oilers fan? Pardon me, what the heck is happening in this bizarre world? But all of a sudden, right, you see how that works out is, yeah, no, it creates matchup benefits. And it sounds funny, if you would have told somebody back when Nuge was drafted first overall that, hey, you know what, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is going to be a third line center career ender with the Oilers, right? Like, as soon as he signs that contract, his role is third line center till he retires, and he's going to have his best seasons of his career doing so. It's like, man, you wasted a first round draft pick, but you got to remember, Nugent-Hopkins has 41 points this season and now is taking over the role as third line center more than likely going forward, thanks to Jay Woodcroft now finally a little bit of gamesmanship against Dallas and finding out, hey, yeah, we got something there. Well, suddenly look at that. Look at how that transitions for the Oilers. Look at how that changes the Oilers. Is you've got more than a point per game third line center. Yeah, you can say a lot of his points have come on the power play. Fair, they have. But would it not be within logic and reason to say that just because he's had points on the power play that have boosted his points, well, suddenly you have for Nugent-Hopkins two 5-on-5 points on the third line, and then a power play assist. Well, think about what that does for your lineup. You have a guy in your lineup going out there and scoring 3 points every other game. 1 on the power play, 2 on the power play, and 1 at 5-on-5, and that guy's on your third line. That changes the complexion of the Oilers' attack quite a bit, right? And that's where I really, that's what I want to hammer home about this Edmonton Oilers lineup. And this is not something new, but the fact that the Oilers have 3 forwards on a third line that are capable of showing what they showed last night, it really does truly change everything. And that's the beauty of this. Jay Woodcroft, by figuring out, okay, look, X, Y, and Z, okay, you know what, maybe it is time, and calculates, and right, this is something that Jay felt pretty good about. You don't just gamesmanship the Dallas Stars, a good team. Sorry, work just texted me. Give me a second here. But you don't just go out there and do that if you don't feel you've got something, right? This isn't just like the Oilers got sneaky and, oh, I think we've got a chance. No, you've got something if you're the Oilers, if you're doing this, because imagine if you kept the lineup hidden this long and then they laid an egg. How would that look, right? And that's the fun part about this, is Jay Woodcroft knows he's got something here, and the boys went out there and rewarded him for giving them the vote of confidence, and now all of a sudden, right, you think about what those lines did last night. Nuge's line had a goal. Yes, Puljujarvi gets his 6th assist of the season. Warren Foegele had his 4th goal of the season, right? The first, second, and third lines plus the power play all had a goal last night. And if you get that 3 nights out of 4 for the Edmonton Oilers, it is not within reason to be doubting the Oilers making a push for first in the standings in the Pacific Division, right? After that win, the Oilers move up to 8th in the Western Conference, but they're 9 points back of the Vegas Golden Knights and have a game in hand. So, right, you even split it even down the middle, you're 8 points back of the Vegas Golden Knights depending on a flip-flop result against Vegas. Well, suddenly, right, to get into second in the division, you're 3 points back with a game in hand against the LA Kings. You're a point back of third against the Seattle Kraken. As you start taking 3 out of 4 or some kind of combination of 6 or 5 out of 8 points, and suddenly you start stealing a lot of points in the standings, especially as we get in the later half of this year where we start matching up against the Pacific Division a lot more. So, right, when I say in the title, and it's another big shouty title because I am lacking on views, and my friends, I'm sorry, when the formula works, and it is what it is. But Jay Woodcroft just changed everything for the Edmonton Oilers by finally balancing Nuge, McDavid, Draisaitl down the middle and giving them the wingers that they need to create points. And that's the beauty of this, my friends. I'm Tyson. This is Dolynny TV. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, when I do these clickbait titles, I at least try to give you something to gnaw on. And I think I gave you 15 minutes worth of something to put in your brain on a Thursday night as we head towards those sweet, sweet, sweet World Juniors. I'm up on out of here.